Well-known sporting commentator Frank Hyde recently gave Channel 3 an interview, and it was so successful that Frank is back in Newcastle on holidays, and he's agreed to talk a little bit more about Sydney football. How are you, Frank?
I'm very well, Noel. It's amazing, you know, that with the sun shining on my back here, that we should even be thinking about football. But as you say, I'm holidaying here, and yet people I meet down the street saying, it won't be long now, you know, and it makes you realise that, well, football doesn't finish. From one end of the season to the start of the next season, there's at least a lot of discussion points.
Well, last time we talked about Canterbury, Bankstown and eastern suburbs. Say I take two other clubs in Souths and Balmain, and you can tell us what you know about both of those clubs.
Well, yes, there's a lot doing with both of them, as a matter of fact. South Sydney, you know, are still reeling from being beaten by Balmain in the last season. And it's strange that only as recently as a couple of weeks ago, 2 weeks ago, the South Sydney committee have decided that they would clamp down on players for next season in their approach to the game. Now that's ominous in the first place and significant. They feel that last year Souths were not as conditioned as they should be. Now, whether it's a reflection on Churchill as coach or the general tenor of the club, I just don't know. But Souths feel that they have a side strong enough to win the competition, with which most people will agree, yes. Of course. And then, of course, they've got no need to make many changes. But they've lost Ivan Jones, a good reserve halfback, and they've bought Brown, a halfback from Manly Rugby Union, who, strangely enough, was a South Sydney junior. So they're buying back one of their own juniors to supplement the side.
They did try and get Wayne Peckham from Penrith too, didn't they?
Yes, but that has fallen through due to the transfer fee, and I think they will just go into the next season, or this season now, with the addition of this halfback Brown.
Now, what about Balmain?
Well, Balmain are in a position where, seeing that they were able to leave out Tutty and Jones and Marashi last year, they're not seeking anything new other than Jeff Connell. You remember Jeff Connell, the international from Queensland, who was another Balmain local. And there's a bit of trouble there, but he is back in Sydney now, and well, Balmain's the only side he can play with, and the league generally would be unwise not to provide for him playing, and it's just a matter of coming to terms with the Brisbane club.
Now, Marashi's gone to North Sydney.
Marashi's gone to North Sydney, yes, and Norths are building up there too, but whether Marashi will be the answer to some of the problems that Norths have had over the last year or so, I'm speaking now in terms of their inconsistency, you know. It remains to be seen, because Marashi didn't play last year, and even though he is a state full-back, they have Mick Maher there, and Maher is captain of the side and just been made a life member of North for his efforts for them, will be a bit hard to put out of that full-back spot.
Just going back to Balmain, what's to become of Jones and Tutty?
Well, it may be significant that, seeing that Marashi has left Balmain, there has been nothing in the news of Jones and Tutty. It could be that they may come to terms with Balmain. I think that they would have a few misgivings now about their attitude last year, because even though there are legal matters pending with them, I think they'd be very wise to shelve them at this stage in light of what happened to John Elford for Western Suburbs, you might remember. I think the league is going to be pretty hard to beat on some of these court cases, and Tutty and Jones are getting just that little bit older each year, and the longer they stay out, well, the more money they're going to miss.
My thanks goes to Frank Hyde, that well-known commentator, for his very interesting talk on Sydney football. Thanks very much, Frank.
It's a pleasure to be here, Noel, in your company.
fabulous Harlem Globetrotters play tonight at the Broadmeadow Basketball Stadium, and with me, one of their star players, Ray Lothry. How are you, Ray?
Fine, how are you, Noel?
Good, and welcome to Newcastle.
Thank you. This is the first time I've ever been here, and it looks like it probably is a pretty interesting city.
Yeah, well, we've got some nice beaches and nice sunshine for today, and of course tonight you'll have a big crowd at the basketball stadium to see you play.
Right, this is what we're really looking for.
Ray, can you tell us just a bit about the Harlem Globetrotters as they are now? Of course, the originals were about 44 years ago, and you're only a young fella, so you wouldn't know a lot about them. But how do the Harlem Globetrotters go today?
Well, probably as compared to the original Trotters or Trotters in yesteryear, as we would more or less say, I think everything today is on a bigger scale than it was then. Probably because of better equipment, better facilities to work with, and probably just a better clientele of ball players. You know, get the exposure now that they didn't have back in the early days.
And how do you become a Harlem Globetrotter?
You know, I often wonder this myself. This is really a good question because I guess you just have to be what they're looking for at one particular time when they're recruiting ball players, or when you go into Globetrotter camp. They pick you on personality, ability to play ball, and probably a lot so in the fact that they don't want to have to train ball players once they bring you to Globetrotter camp. So you have to have a certain amount of natural ability that goes along with being a Harlem Globetrotter.
You would have already played, in effect, for another basketball team before you come to the Harlem Globetrotters, is that it?
This is probably true in the sense that maybe college, you would have played college ball or competition somewhere with another team where you more or less received your exposure, or were to try to learn of your ability somewhere else.
Now, you travelled throughout America for sure, but what about other countries in the world? How many countries have you been to?
Well, I've been in just about all of Europe. I've been in Australia, New Zealand. I'm going en route to the Philippines. And, of course, like I say, I'm one of the newer fellows with the Trotters. I haven't been in all 87 countries that they have traveled into, but I am looking forward to going to these places.
Ray, we hear a lot about racial problems and things like this. Do the Harlem Globetrotters find any difficulties in this respect?
This is something in my 5 years of traveling with the Trotters that I've never experienced as a ball player with the Harlem Globetrotters. I believe it's probably the fact that the people have accepted the Globetrotters as being members of the limelight or something, and the red carpet treatment is usually rolled out when the Trotters do appear in towns and different places.
Being professional basketball players of a variety type, we'd say, as against a professional in the true sense of gameplay, how does the money rate? Would a professional basketball player in America get more money, say, than a Harlem Globetrotter?
I don't really know the answer to this, truthfully, to say that they do or that they don't. Some of the superstars, and we're talking about ball players like Wilt Chamberlain, Lou Alcindor, and these type of fellows, they sign million-dollar contracts. Trotters doesn't sign any superstars of this. They more or less put in a bid one time for Lou Alcindor. But being that when you're bidding for different ball players, you want to have to compete with I don't know how many different ball clubs that want the same ball players. So in the long run, I would say that the Trotters do receive good salary.
Well, I'm sure that the people of Newcastle will be looking forward to seeing you play, Ray. We welcome you to Newcastle and hope you do well. And, the best of luck to you and the Harlem Globetrotters.
Thank you, Noel.
And my guest on the right is the little boy, Ray Lothry.